FC26 is coming in just a couple of weeks, but unfortunately, we're going to end up losing a bunch of really fun clubs that are in FC25. This means that you've only got a few weeks to do some of these saves before the majority of people head over to the newest game. Today, I have found 5 really interesting teams that are going to be removed, mainly due to being relegated, but nearly all of them are going to need a total rebuild. That's great, because that's the most fun thing to do in career mode anyway. So let's not just start with a save that you definitely can't do on FC26, but one that you might never be able to do ever again on a FIFA game. On the 21st of April, after 18 years in the Football League, Morecambe were relegated to the National League, but that would only be the start of the drama this summer. The club would have several potential sales drop through, so the club's directors planned to put the club in administration on the 2nd of July if the club had not been sold to new owners. Well, this deadline actually came and went, and the club had still not been sold, but would eventually get suspended from the National League too. On the 6th of August, things had got so bad that even the Prime Minister of the UK urged everyone considered to do the right thing and sell the club. But still, as of the 14th of August, the club has been suspended from the National League and is still unsold. If things keep going this way, the club really is at risk of disappearing altogether. It is so sad for everyone involved, but this really could be your last chance to use them in career mode. If you use the live start points, on all of them you will be beginning your career in last place, but that doesn't mean relegation on FIFA, because you'll get a second season to try and get things right. Morecambe do actually have a fairly good academy. They've got decent loan links to larger teams in the region, especially with Burnley and Tranmere, so it's not actually too difficult to build this club up from the point of death to thriving in the Championship. I would say that should definitely be the goal of your save, because similarly sized clubs have made it to the Premier League before, but I think just being around in 3 years' time would probably count as a win for a club like Morecambe. While Morecambe is a pretty nice place, a slightly more exotic seaside city is also being removed from the game this year. This time it's the Spanish island city of Tenerife. Tenerife, while being a Spanish football team, is actually technically based in Africa and does play in the 2nd division, or at least they did in FC25. Their third bottom finish saw them relegated into the regional divisions and therefore have been deleted from FC26. I'm recommending Tenerife mainly because of their unique location and the fact that opens up some pretty fun possibilities. The most interesting idea would be to try and bring through a generation of African, or more specifically Moroccan players, and try and manage their national team, as Tenerife are actually the closest we're going to get to another continent being on the game for a while. With the expanded youth scouting of FC25, you've also got a few more options nearby that you can use to scout players from too. Alternatively, if you prefer to keep things a bit more realistic, you can fill your academy with African and Spanish talents. Tenerife has produced some really good players in the past, including Pedro and Iosi Perez, who were both born in Tenerife. David Silva and Jesse Rodriguez came from nearby Gran Canaria, which is also the home island to Tenerife's big rivals Las Palmas. While this club isn't going to disappear, they aren't really in the best situation. They've been promoted to the top division on 4 occasions, including being in La Liga for 10 years in a row from 1989 to 1999. In this time, they finished as high as 5th in La Liga, earned qualification for the first round of the UEFA Cup, and if you decide to take over them on FC25, I think that's probably the goal, to try and bring European football to Africa and just try and play an extended Spanish league side with Tenerife. Their unique location is going to be missed on FC26 because there's nothing really like this, and that's why I think it's quite sad that you can't do the save on FC26. Now, while it is a big deal that Tenerife have gone down, it's actually quite hard to imagine that Boa Vista have also been relegated in Portugal. It's actually quite a unique idea just to rebuild this club normally. You might be thinking, how can just a regular rebuild ever be unique? Well, you'll be rebuilding Boa Vista in Portugal to try and become the first team to ever win 2 Primeira League titles that isn't called Porto, Benfica or Sporting. While Boa Vista did have a lot of success in the past, they aren't in a great situation at the moment. Last year, players weren't paid for a couple of months, the training ground was suspended due to water and gas cuts, and players were even forced to shower at home rather than at the training ground. Their best coach also resigned, the best one for decades, because of everything that was going on off the pitch, and it did feel like the beginning of the end was slowly coming, and it's finally here. So if we go back to 2001, that's when Boa Vista won their first title. They were the first team outside of the Big Three to have won one since 1946, and no one has actually done it since, and that's what you're going to end. This club can sign players from anywhere. There's basically no restrictions on anything in the Portuguese league if you want to keep things realistic, and of course the kits are one of the most unique with the funky chessboard style that you've been seeing in the video. It is such a shame that Boa Vista are disappearing, because in my opinion they were always one of the most fun saves if you wanted to play in Portugal. However, if you don't want to play in Portugal and you prefer France, maybe you'll remember a team called Cannes. You might recognise their Viking logo, or you might know that they're the club that Kylian Mbappe actually owns 80% of, or that they're always rated as one of the best academies in the country every time the FA does an academy rankings list. But despite this, they came bottom of the second division, despite playing in Ligue 1 just a few years ago. That of course means that they're now playing in the French National, the third division, and therefore are going to get deleted from FC26. To be fair, the National would be a great division to add to the game because they join clubs like Bordeaux, Le Mans, and a bunch of other teams that have at one point played in the highest division. Anyway, sadly there's no live start points where you can start in March or April with Cannes, so instead you're going to have to start from July. That means that there's no point trying to close the 6-point gap to the relegation zone that they had in the final 8 games of the season. Instead, you're just going to have to rebuild the club to be promoted. To be fair, the board is a little bit delusional because that is also what they expect you're going to be able to do. But even if you do win the league with a team that actually got relegated in real life, you'll then get promoted to the top division and then be able to challenge your owner Mbappe in European competitions. To be fair, the Normandy region is full of talent, so you could also go that way and make your own sort of Bilbao regional save. Cannes really could be the team that can do it all. To be fair, they'll probably return in FC27. There's not a huge crisis going on at Cannes, and I think they'll probably bounce back pretty quick. But if you want a fun save with a French team, known for its academy and also has a famous owner, then Cannes is probably one of your first picks on FC25. Okay, so I definitely have saved the saddest for last. While Morecambe is possibly going to die, Brescia in Italy no longer exists. They're not at risk, they have already died. Brescia, just like every Italian club, has a pretty crazy history. They played in Serie C, the third division, and a couple of years later were reaching European finals. Last year they only survived relegation from Serie B by 2 goals, but this year they did go down, and that was the final blow. Roberto Baggio, Andrea Pirlo, Pep Guardiola, Luca Toni, George Hagi, Marek Hamsik, Sandro Tonali. All of that history has disappeared, mainly because of a €3 million debt. This club didn't have some big issue, they hadn't just spent loads of money on transfers, they just had an owner that refused to pay a single debt. That's why I think it would probably be really fun to pretend that the fans have taken control of this team, and in the first window, you have to raise that €3 million before you can sign anyone. I think there's actually 3 steps to having a really fun career with Brescia. The first is to create one of those legends that I mentioned earlier. I would go for Pirlo, Hamsik or Baggio as your manager. Step 2, have a look on Transfermarkt and have a look at the list of former academy players from Brescia and try and sign a few that make sense to try and bring a bit more identity back into the club. Finally, pump as much money as you've got left from your transfer budget into one youth scout, get the best one you can, send them to Italy, and slowly start building up a high potential club and see if you can find the next Sandro Tonali or Andrea Pirlo. Despite Brescia being Italy's lowest rated team, I think you could probably get promoted by the end of Season 3 at the latest. With your players now hitting their early 20s, you should be set to have a pretty successful time in Serie A. Of course, this won't be something you can do in FC26 or possibly ever again unless they somehow reform and win 3 promotions from the 5th division. But hopefully you've enjoyed looking at 5 saves that are not going to be possible on FC26. Now is the time to start one of these, and if you do start one of them, let me know in the comments which one you've picked. I've actually got so much content planned for FC26 already, so if you're interested in watching any of that, please do subscribe to the channel and like this video if you liked any of these save ideas. But I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching, cheers, and goodbye.